Okay, we're right at time, so we'll kick things off. I just want to begin by saying hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Michelle Kelly, and I'm the Global Marketing Director for Bloomsbury Digital Resources. We are so pleased to have you join us for our webinar today entitled Diversity and Inclusion in Religious Studies Teaching, using Bloomsbury Religion in North America in the Classroom and Beyond. So Bloomsbury Religion in North America just launched this past month, and it is part of Theology and Religion Online, which is the digital home to a growing range of research and study resources designed for students and scholars of religious studies, theology, biblical studies, and related fields. Bloomsbury Religion in North America is a digital product for your library composed of ebooks, images, and digitally exclusive articles that include broad overviews of key themes, discussions of key debates, theories, and controversies, case studies, and more. We're very lucky to have three of our contributors here with us today. Anthony Pinn, Shalina Kassam, and Darren Doherty will begin their conversation shortly. But first, we want to provide you with a brief introduction to Bloomsbury Religion in North America. And with that, I will hand the presentation over to Fabio Antonini, a senior product manager here at Bloomsbury.
Thank you, Michelle. I'll just quickly share my screen and we can begin. Hopefully that's up for everyone now, but let me know if not. But hello, everyone. So yes, to introduce myself, I'm Fabio Antonini. I'm a product manager in the Bloomsbury Digital Resources team, and I'm going to give you all a quick walkthrough of the Bloomsbury Religion in North America module, how it sits on our Theology and Religion Online platform, how you can use our enhanced search and browse functionality to explore this rich collection of article and ebook content for yourselves. So BRINA, as the acronym goes, is the latest collection to be added to our ever-growing Theology and Religion Online platform, or TARO for short. For those of you who aren't yet familiar with TARO, this is a cross-searchable modular hub which hosts collections of cutting-edge teaching and study resources across a range of subject areas in theological, biblical, and religious studies. Everything from major reference works, scholarly monographs and commentaries, to newly commissioned teaching resources and primary source materials. If you visit our homepage, you can see further details of all of the various collections hosted on this platform, as well as a wealth of supporting materials on offer to students and instructors, including an interactive timeline, dedicated teaching resources, and a range of editorially curated highlights from across each of our collections. If we click into the BRINA collection tile here, we are led to a dedicated collection landing page where you can learn more about the collection and begin your search and browse journey through the content itself. There is a similar page for every module on the platform, which you can access at any time through the Browse Collections tab in the top navigation bar, which you can access here. So as Michelle just explained, BRINA is a collection of newly commissioned peer-reviewed study articles covering each of North America's rich and diverse religious traditions, as well as deep dives into contemporary societal issues such as religion, race and ethnicity, the environment, gender and sexuality, religious pluralism, and religion and politics. These articles are divided into different religious and thematic sections, and all of these are supported by a range of scholarly ebooks and image galleries. You can view the full article and ebook title list by selecting the Browse Collection button here, and you'll be presented with a list of all of the articles and ebooks available on the collection. Or you can use the landing page to scroll down to the different sections which are currently on offer on the site. So at launch, we have a range of introductory articles known as the basics on 4 major religions, plus an introduction to the study skills, which students will find relevant to their courses, as well as more in-depth studies of these religions in a North American context, and some of the major societal issues affecting them in the present day. As the resource builds out over time, we will be adding even more sections dedicated to other major religions in North America and their contemporary issues, and we will be updating our customers and our mailing lists as this happens. So watch this space for further information. So each of these sections has its own bespoke table of contents, which we can click into here as an example. And through this, you can browse and click straight through to any articles or ebooks within this collection that are of interest. The articles themselves, as you'll see under the titles, are categorized as either introductory overviews, in-depth case studies of a particular social group or activity, or deep dives into hot topics, contemporary hot topics such as vaccination or climate change, or the teaching of evolution. So this is an example of one of the sections that's included in the resource, and the articles and ebooks contained within. But as well as these section-based content lists, every article, image, and ebook chapter has been individually tagged according to its related religion or topic. And you can use our Browse by Theme section here to explore all of the content across the resource according to your particular topic or religion of interest. So given the theme of today's presentation, we can take an example like diversity, for instance. And these links take you through to a search results page in which all of the articles within the resource, all of the ebook chapters that are contained within, and all of the associated images in our image gallery that are associated with the theme of diversity in religion will be presented to you. So these indexing terms, which you can see along the sidebar here, could also be used to filter down any free text searches through which you want to interrogate the main body of text of the content. And you can perform these through the search bar here, which appears at the top of every page. So for example, if I wanted to search for a term like education, I could type this into the search bar, and again, I will be presented with a list of all of the articles or ebook chapters that contain this term, and these are initially filtered by the kind of hit density of that term within a chapter, so it should promote to you the most relevant content at the front. And I can filter down these search results, for example, according to their association with Islam as a religion, to take an example. And again, this now refines it down to search results for the topic of education within the context of Islam, and I should get a more dedicated search results page. Also on the search results page, you will see some details about the number of hits for that term that are contained within every article, a preview of the article within, a preview of the search term within the main text of the article. And if I were to click through to one of the articles itself, as an example, we can see that my search term is highlighted wherever it occurs within the text. So this allows me to jump between the different references to that particular term as it appears. So here we are now on an article page view itself, and I'll just give you a few details of how they're structured. So every article on the site provides users with a table of contents, which includes all of the headings within the article, information about the article's authors and editors, as well as these bespoke indexing terms against which every article has been tagged. And you can click through to these to get more search results according to these particular indexing terms. Within the text itself, pop-up glossaries have been made available for particular thematic keywords, and clicking on a citation within the text will take you to that full bibliographic reference within a dedicated further reading and references section, which every article includes, which readers can use to continue their studies within this area. Going back to the top, a list of links underneath the sort of bibliographic information of the article tell you which section of the resource this article sits within. So you can go back to that section landing page that we saw before. And again, you can see all of the articles and ebooks that are related to this one. And in addition, there is a dedicated related content bar, which uses shared taxonomy terms to recommend to users other content that might be related to the article you're currently reading and which you might be interested in. So once I have found an article or an ebook chapter of interest, I can use these icons at the top to either save my results to a personal account, to share them externally, to export citations, and to print the page if I want to. So there's an example of how these citations look in different formats. Going back to the search results, If I click into an ebook chapter, I am provided with a similar interactive text view, but with the option to jump back up to the full ebook table of contents page, where I can find more information about the volume and links to all the other chapters included within. So finally, on the search results page, as I mentioned, all of the images which are included within the article set are also separately discoverable using the same free text and browse functionality. So if a term appears within the metadata for an image, it will appear in your search results. And again, the image view will give you examples of the related images based on shared subject tagging. And there is also a link to go back to the article within which that image was contained. So that's a very quick walkthrough of the content on BRINA and how to explore it. I'll just quickly finish by showing two other resources which you can use to discover the rich array of content available on the site. The first is our interactive timeline, which presents key dates and events from across the history of religious thought and practice, and which also contains links to relevant content from across all of our modules for users to explore. The second of these is a dedicated featured content page, which we have compiled to celebrate the launch of Bloomsbury Religion in North America, through which you can explore highlights of the collection, again, appropriately enough, and in this case, around the theme of religion and diversity. And there will be more examples of these thematic pages added over time. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoy exploring the resource. I will hand back to Michelle and to the rest of the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fabio. So now that we've had a brief overview of the resource itself, I'd like to take the opportunity now to dive in a little bit more on the content. So with that said, I will hand the presentation over to Anthony, Shalina, and Dyron, and thank you so much.
Thank you. What if we begin by providing just a bit of information about ourselves and then tackle that first question, why we agreed to be a part of this project. Shalina, would you like to begin?
Sure. So my name is Shalina Kassam. I live in Ontario, Canada. I am a scholar of critical race studies and particularly around what's happening to Muslims in North America. I've been teaching at the University of Toronto for a number of years. Why I agreed to participate in a project like this was because I think, you know, it was fascinating to me that that we can provide resources in this sort of format that is easy to access for students, that puts things in a particular in places where they can understand it. I often find for my undergraduate students in particular, I have to really curate what I give them to read, because if I give them things that are too simplistic, they get bored and they tune out. If I give them things that are meant for graduate students or scholars, it is overwhelming, and they struggle to, especially at the year one and year two undergraduate. So somebody here has helped us curate resources that are appropriate and meaningful for students, particularly undergraduate students, but also for other scholars, including graduate students, who want to actually delve into looking at scholarship in these areas. So for me, that was really compelling, and that's one of the reasons I agreed to participate in that.
Darren?
Yeah, Tony, thanks a lot. It's great to be here with you all. Shalina, good to meet you virtually. I've met Anthony a couple of times in the past. Yeah, it's just a privilege. It's an honor. I mean, anything like this, you know, religious diversity, anything associated with Bloomsbury is going to be good. So whenever I saw Bloomsbury is involved, I thought, you know, that's going to be a good product. That's going to be worthwhile. And anything, to be honest, Tony, this is partly because your name's on it and you're a great scholar, and I read a lot of the stuff that you produce. And so when I saw Tony Pinn, I said, I'm in. All right. Now, regarding my own, feelings and beliefs and so forth, is two things, basically, why I was drawn into this. And it's religious literacy. That's the first one. And the second one has to do more of a, I would say more of a religious aspect, and that is compassion. So let me look first at religious literacy. I think that religious literacy is important because as we diversify as a nation, as a globe, we just don't understand the difference between, Sikhism and Islam. I mean, people don't know the differences between these religions, and people are going to be in cubicles next to people of other faith. People are going to be in cubicles working in an office next to people who are, conservative or even Hasidic Jews. You're going to have Muslims and Hindus down the hall from you. This is just the new reality of our modern world. I was going to say America, but this is really certainly in the Western world. This is just a common thing nowadays, and I think it's incumbent upon us to know a little bit about what other people believe, because religion is at the very core of our identity. I mean, we're raised with it. Our grandparents, they pass it down to our parents and pass it down to us. And it's at the core, it's at the heart of who we are. And so to me, it's showing respect for other people whenever I know the difference between a Reformed Jew and a Hasidic Jew. That's important for me. And I tell my students this, that look, religious literacy is no longer just some kind of interesting field. Religious literacy now comes with there's more important elements around it now. You could literally cause problems if you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to religion. You could literally cause problems that play out in real time and in real life if you don't know the first thing about people's religious beliefs, which are often the most important thing that they hold dear. Now, secondly, is compassion. It's kind of a related concept, but the way I teach a lot of world religions here at my university. Compassion to me is key. Whenever we foster empathy and compassion, I think that we're making our world a better place. Compassion is crucial, not just in amongst religious people, but in the workplace, in politics, in our daily dealings with the man at the gas station. Having compassion, understanding where he's coming from. So this is what drew me in to bringing in a diverse array of scholars. I was over 2 sections, and so I dealt with a whole diverse array of people, got to know them. But I love the idea of having all these different scholars, all representing different races, ethnicities, religious orientation, religious background, gender, all sorts of diversity. That's what brought me into this project. And so it's a real privilege.
And you're logging in from Pepperdine, is that right?
Yes, sir. Yep, Pepperdine in Malibu, California.
There you go. I'm Anthony Penn. I'm at Rice University. I do work on African American religion and constructive theology, and I'm quickly approaching my 30th year teaching. And most of what I taught has been kind of confined to African American religion. So I agreed to be involved for 2 primary reasons. One, it was an opportunity to think and learn beyond my particular area. And there just aren't a tremendous number of quality opportunities for me to do that. And this was one, to get a sense of what's taking place beyond what I do and to be challenged by that. Also, in terms of my students, I find that they are deeply interested in thinking about religion in ways that are complex, right? To kind of think about religion as it impacts the world and how it is impacted by the world, and to view that in terms of their own cultural sensibilities. So the work on music here is of particular interest to me. But for the students, it's this opportunity to kind of think expansively. Also for the students who are hearing kind of inaccurate statements concerning the value of the humanities, the opportunity to think about the study of religion in relationship to a larger skill set that positions them to do some wonderful things in the world, right? The ability to kind of think and interrogate that skill set and to think about the study of religion in relationship to that skill set, for me, was a no-brainer. And I'll be real with you, right? It's expensive for students to take these courses. And there are ways in which I want to add complexity, but I'm also adding to the cost. And here you have a quality experience that is also cost effective for students, right? It hurts me to assign students readings that will ultimately cost them $300, $400, $500, $600. Here's an opportunity to get quality information by outstanding scholars and not have to think about the dollar amount. So all of that for me made this an absolute no-brainer. This was just easy, 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 easy. And so diversity has come up in our conversation so far. So perhaps we can talk a bit more about diversity in terms of what we wanted covered in terms of diversity in the project, and also how this might impact a sense of diversity with respect to religion. So it was most explicit in your conversation, Darren. So perhaps you'll get us started.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Tony. I mean, talk about compassion, empathy, informed perspectives. These are crucial, aren't they, Shalina and Tony, to just to be in respectful people. You know, if I don't know anything about you, I'm going to be a little nervous. I'm probably going to be a little bit distrustful. I'm probably going to be less willing to sort of be an ally if I don't understand you, I don't get you. And so the diversity is important because in this project we're delving into diversity. Mm-hmm. Sure, there's going to be students who, I'm sure, at least in my world, there's going to be students, some of these issues, some of these faiths are intimidating. And so when they dive in, I think it's going to expose them to religious diversity, which, you know, some people, you know, people use the word, you know, Christophobia or Islamophobia, you know, and of course, Judaism has a whole history of this, but I mean, I don't know that it's, I mean, I don't know what to make of that, but I do think that this presents an opportunity for people to delve into that and get some exposure by reading a well-researched story, a well-researched article. And I think the blinders are, you know, like Paul in the book of Acts, I think the scales are going to fall from their eyes. They're going to say, these are people too. These Buddhists, these Hindus, these Muslims, these Jews that I'm reading about, they're people too. They're dealing with all the same stuff. You know, they're dealing with gender issues, sexual issues, just like I am as a, you know, let's say an American Christian. I mean, they're dealing with all these things too. But, you know, Tony and Shalina, diversity comes in more ways than what we hear about these days. You know, diversity, if we're going to talk about true diversity, yeah, you know, you got religious, you got racial and ethnic, which are not necessarily the same. Racial and ethnic, not necessarily the same. You got national, you know, at Pepperdine, we get all kinds of students from all over the world. And sometimes those students, you know, from like Asia, they'll be over here, or the students from Western Europe will be over in this side of the room. And, you know, diversity, we need the diversity in order to complexify our classrooms and make them into communities. Even here in America, we have regional diversity. So as we saw, you know, Californians and West Virginians and Texans, you know, they see the world slightly differently. There's viewpoint diversity. You got political orientation, of course, gender and sexuality. I mean, there's diversity is extremely diverse, and I think that it's important to foster a sense of community. So right now, I'm teaching a world religions class. I'm teaching a summer class, and Tony and Shalene, I don't know if you're dealing with this. I have 7 women and 1 man, which is kind of becoming increasingly common. I'm getting so few guys. That's another topic. I don't know where they are. I mean, but it's going great. I'm having a wonderful class. But my current class has 8 people. 1 is a Pentecostal, 2 are agnostics, because they divulged this on the first day. It just kind of happened. I said, tell us a bit about yourself. And the first person talked about their religion. And so everyone else did. I was like, yeah, that I don't have to ask, and it just came out. And it was healthy. So you got a Pentecostal, you had 2 agnostics, you had 1 Catholic, very devout Catholic, 1 who classified herself as mystical neo-Buddhist, and then 3 evangelicals. And last night we had a dinner at my house, all 8 of these students and my family. My wife and I hosted them, and we have 4 kids. Everyone just intermixed. And what happened was, in this class, we built camaraderie. We built community in this class, in this religious studies class. All these kids have been, in a Zoom environment for so long, but they came to my house, and because we've had this rich learning experience, everyone just opened up. Now, I'll wind it down now, but I mean, one thing that is a little bit scary is sometimes you get a student or 2 who, kind of soapbox in a class. They get up on a soapbox, and sometimes that can be debilitating, or that can slow down the community that I'm trying to build as a teacher. I'd love to hear from you guys as to what do you do. You're building diverse community from all kinds of different people, but then you have 1 or 2 that's kind of undermining you as a teacher. That sometimes that happens, but thank goodness that's not happening in my class right now. We have turned into a wonderful in-person community. It's been fabulous.
I'm happy to jump in, Tony, if you'd like. I want to actually build on Darren's idea of religious literacy. I think literacy is really, really crucial. I want to link religious literacy to something called what I'm now going to call sociological literacy, because sociological literacy actually helps us to understand how diversity or lack of diversity, lack of equity, lack of inclusion, lack of justice shapes our societal interactions. For those of you who know, we in Canada, and I know you in the US and in other parts of the world, have very painful histories. And in Canada, certainly over the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 weeks, we've had some really painful moments of national reckoning with Indigenous communities, with unmarked graves in residential schools. We've had some horrible anti-Muslim racism resulting in deaths and violent attacks on Muslims, particularly Muslim women. One attack killing 4 members, multi-generational members of a family in the city in which I live. So we've had some really painful experiences. And I think when we're talking about religious diversity, when we talk about sociological diversity, literacy, what we do is we help students understand the breadth and depth of human experiences, both across religious, racial, ethnic, class, gender groups, and within them, right? So I think it's really important for us to think about, all right, there are distinctions even within groupings. So not all Muslims practice the same way. I think that breadth of diversity, or not all Buddhists practice the same way. To understand how these communities and individuals think, how they live, how they perceive life, their understanding of society is critical, as is the idea that some norms, some dominant norms have become embedded in the way in which society functions. And that sometimes it's really important for us to understand how those norms become embedded so we can help to deconstruct them, because religious and sociological literacies are really important individually, but it also helps us look at systemic exclusion, systemic oppression, systemic injustices, right? And it allows people, and our students particularly, to think through some of these issues in ways they might not have had they lived in more insulated communities that don't have diversities. It also allows those that feel have great diversities within their groupings, again, class, racial, ethnic, religious, etc., to have voices, to honor the lived experiences of those individuals and groups within communities and within society. I find in talking about, when we get into what I like to call lively conversations in our classroom, and where some people perhaps are, as you put it, on a soapbox. Sometimes it's really important to be really clear, gentle, but firm and clear about holding space for those that have been excluded, that have painful lived experiences of exclusion and marginalization. So that we can actually kind of learn from their lived experiences, because those lived experiences, those non-dominant, and I don't like to call them non-dominant, but those that have those experiences that are not necessarily in the dominant, within the dominant norms, often don't have those spaces. And they teach us so very much, right? So it's kind of that process of, let's talk about what do we mean by diversity, by equity, by inclusion, by justice, ultimately. Because I want, so for me, I'm a sociologist. I study and research, I teach in the area of, as I said, critical race study, which is rapidly acquiring a rather contested conversation in some parts of the world right now. But I also teach using Muslims and Muslim lived experiences as ways to enter those conversations and the conversations around equity and justice. So from the perspective of Muslims, what are the diversities within Muslim communities, in terms of communities of interpretation, in terms of racial groupings, right? In terms of, because even within critical Muslim studies, or even within Muslim studies or studies of Muslim communities, there are dominant norms. Within mainstream society, there are dominant norms. So what voices are not being explored? And one of the things I think this resource gives us is both the breadth and the depth of those diversities, so that we can encourage and invite our students to really think through and reflect upon both those diversities and how in mainstream society, we often don't hear about those diversities, and it'll allow them as they emerge out of their studies, go into the workforce, go into, whether it's through scholarship or through professional lives, they will hopefully think through some of these issues in much more nuanced and much more complex ways, which will allow us to rebuild societies that are more strongly based on equity and justice.
I would agree with you both. In full agreement with you. I would simply add that it seems to me the way in which diversity as it gets represented in this project works to our benefit is, one, it helps us and helps students to shift our posture or mood towards the work. That is to say, we begin thinking differently about discomfort, right? And kind of seeing the productive nature of discomfort. That there can be a kind of quick impulse to wipe out difference. Well, at the end of the day, we're just all the same, but here's an opportunity to hold in creative tension, right? To kind of recognize difference, not as a problem to solve, but an opportunity. And it's one thing to do that in terms of traditions that are theistic or flirt with theism, but here, this project also brings into play communities that are sure enough non-theistic, at times hostile towards theism. And the question then, the presentation of that material in a robust and respectful way kind of encourages students to kind of think about religion differently and to wrestle with the proper vocabulary and grammar for describing the religious. right? It doesn't offer easy answers. It interrogates this in such a way as to maintain discomfort and push us to think about how we communicate these values, how we communicate this information. And for me, that is a win. I'd also just quickly say that there's something about this project that encourages us to recognize more fully the ways in which these traditions are embodied. Right? It kind of urges us to move beyond just thinking these traditions and to kind of recognize how they play out in terms of materiality, in terms of embodied movement through the world. And I think that is of just deep, deep value. I think we have enough time to handle our last question. And that question just gives us an opportunity to kind of think through and kind of envision how this resource might be used within courses, right? How this might impact syllabi. Who wants to start?
Tony, you're the only one that hasn't started first. Go for it.
So I see it functioning this way. I mean, it includes kind of easily digested pieces in terms of word length, but also provides students with ebooks, right? Full access to much larger arguments and discussions. And so in terms of my own classes, I see it functioning this way, that my classes tend to be thematic in nature. And so this is an opportunity to give students a chance within the context of small group work to wrestle with these thematic issues. So moral evil, for example, and to kind of explore that within the context of various traditions. And I like my students to do group work, right? So they do this work on their own, and here's a resource that gives them easy access to really good discussions of how these themes play out within various traditions. And so give students opportunity to wrestle with that material and then bring it back into the classroom and offer students additional readings, additional opportunities, additional examples. And so there are some physical texts that I'll maintain, but this will become a way of kind of linking all of those arguments, right? Kind of linking those thematic developments across these traditions. And so, for example, I do some work on the Nation of Islam. And so here's an opportunity to kind of think more expansively, right? To think in terms of Islam and politics beyond Malcolm X. And to give students materials that they can digest and work with that allow them to reach and expand beyond that set theme.
Yeah, I love those ideas. Tony, I similarly work thematically, but I also use case studies as a critical component of the work I do in the classroom. And the focus on case studies is brilliant because it allows students to have some of those physical texts that may be, articles outside, but then link into this work in case studies, but also in some of the thematic ideas that are there. I love the idea of them being able to, the image I have is kind of like, this is a resource that sort of has layers to it. And you can go deeper and deeper into that, or you can switch tacks and go in another direction. And I think that's, it offers a very robust and very adaptable resource that I would certainly use in the classroom in terms of the case study approach, in terms of the thematic approach. I love the idea you have around group work, because I have done group work in some of my courses, and I'd like to sort of expand on that. And this would allow me to do that in ways that are, again, very adaptable and creative, and yet, yes, absolutely cost effective, because I'm also very conscious of asking students to buy text after text. I try very hard to not have those, because I'm aware of the again, the challenges that students have around around access to higher education, and textbooks is a part of that. So this offers that adaptable, flexible source, but also in ways that are interactive and in a platform that students are using.
Yeah.
Fewer and fewer of my students actually read a textbook, printed textbook. They do. Some like me like the actual printed word, but many of them are very used to the online interactive format, and it allows them to jump between different aspects. So I think it's a very useful resource. I'm certainly excited about using it. I think there are ways that even in terms of for students to explore, because many students come to me and say, okay, you want me to write my paper on a case study, but I don't know about case studies. And this would be one way for them to explore and say, all right, what are you interested in? Look up a theme, see what are the issues, not just in terms of the case studies, but even some of the main articles will prompt and catalyze ideas in their brains around, oh, I didn't know that was happening in Cuba. What are Muslims doing in Cuba, for example? Wow, that's a really interesting thing. Let's think about that. Or I didn't know that niqabs were possibly banned are banned in Quebec. Why is that? Let me use that as a case study. So there's all sorts of ways that students can actually use this to prompt thinking and ideas, and ways that instructors can use this resource to structure the reflective thinking among students.
And just one thing before you jump in. I get a lot of students from across the campus, right? Lots of engineers, lots of chemists, physicists. And so I think moving forward, I'll begin that first week of class kind of wrestling with the study skills, right? Give them those readings to get a sense of how they ought to handle this subject, right? And so regardless of where they're coming from across the university, it will provide all of them with a starting point, right? How do you do this course?
Yeah. I love the idea of the many different authors from just all over the map and different backgrounds. I love that, because what I tend to do, rightly or wrongly, I tend to assign, a typical textbook. But what you get is you get one person's perspective on something. So my two major classes at Pepperdine, I teach several, but the two that I teach a lot are world religions and then history of Christianity. Now, my world religions class, I haven't thought through how to do that. I teach that one round the clock, and I have kind of my way of doing it. So I'm going to have to think long and hard about switching, because I've worked on it for years now, and I've got it about where I want it. So I don't know what I'm going to do there yet and how to integrate BRINA. But my history of Christianity class is going to change immediately. Going to discard the textbook, and I'm going to use BRINA. Because, the two sections that I was in charge of one was called Christianity, the Basics, and one was called Christianity in North America, which is very, very diverse. Christianity in North America is all over the place. You got Indonesian Christians, Vietnamese Christians, you got all manner of Pentecostal churches and so forth. And so Tony, you just mentioned something that I plan to integrate is in my church history class. I'll take them to those basics articles first. They can get their head around, what are we talking? Like you say, I get students from chemistry. I get students from English lit. They haven't studied Christianity. Maybe they went through catechism when they were kids, but they haven't studied the history of Christianity. And so in a collegiate, academic. So I do those basics. Then we're going to go into, more regional, like where you have Anabaptists and Hutterites and Mennonites and so forth. And then we're going to go into these case studies. Because one thing that I just don't like, and that's when students get a little too zealous about a topic that their knowledge is basically coming from a mediocre source, like maybe a a 60-second piece on something on CNN or on the news station, you know, they don't have the fullness, they don't have background, they don't have context. And so if I do the basics and then do the regional different types of Christianity, now let's go to those hot topics. And now when we talk about those hot topics and those case studies, you've read for, you know, 8 weeks now about kind of establishing a foundation. Because like I said earlier, my most important goals in my classes is to establish, I mean, outside of education, obviously, but it's to establish a community, establish compassion. So I like to foster community in my classroom. I want these students to become maybe not friends, but certainly warm acquaintances in the course of my class. I want them to be warm with each other, have coffee with each other, you know, be able to talk. And so, you know, I don't know, Shalina and Tony, I don't know if you guys do this. I've never really done it, but, you know, putting the chairs in a circle. Mm-hmm. But this BRINA project, I've never done that. I've always been more of a lecturer, you know, and I probably am you know, in need of correcting here. But this BRINA project and working on it over the last 2 or 3 years, it's given me the confidence that I think now for my church history class, History of Christianity, I'm going to get rid of the textbook, have them read different articles, and we're going to get in a circle. We're going to talk about these things and facilitate religious literacy, but also that community that I'm so hungry for in my classroom. And I think my students are hungry for that community in the classroom as well.
From my experience, it works brilliantly.
This has been fantastic chatting with you, and I'm hoping I'll see you in San Antonio at the AAR, if not before.
Yeah, I'll be there.
I hope to see you all there as well. Just to conclude, I just want to harken back to something that Tony said, that this is quality information by outstanding scholars that is cost effective for students. So with that said, I just really want to thank these 3 outstanding scholars for a wonderful, wonderful conversation today and for really encouraging us to think expansively. So very much appreciated that you took the time today to do this. And so hopefully this conversation will continue in the classroom for everyone. And another quote I love from today was that anything associated with Bloomsbury is good. So we definitely encourage you to speak to your librarian if you're a faculty member, and if you are a librarian, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. If you would like more information about Bloomsbury Religion in North America, do feel free to leave your information in the chat box and we'll pick that up. And we hope to see everyone very soon. Take good care, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you. Take good care.